Apple is taking OpenAI to court. The tech giant is suing the artificial intelligence company, accusing it of stealing trade secrets. With the AI race in overdrive, firms are competing to release the latest products. But how's that competition being regulated? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Anna Burns-Francis. Apple is taking on OpenAI in court. The tech giants filed a lawsuit against the artificial intelligence company for what it calls pervasive theft. Apple's accusing OpenAI of stealing trade secrets and confidential information as it seeks to build its own hardware. OpenAI is denying the accusations, but it's the latest fallout between the two companies as their business relationship turns from a partnership into a legal battle. So, how can this fiercely competitive industry be regulated to ensure healthy competition? We'll discuss that with our guests, but first, this report from Laura Khan.
Rotten to its core. This is an excerpt from a lawsuit by the tech giant Apple, accusing artificial intelligence firm OpenAI of stealing trade secrets, using them to create its first AI hardware. The lawsuit, filed in a district court in California, accuses OpenAI of poaching employees and requesting they do not come empty-handed. Among those named in the case is former Apple Vice President of Product Design Tang Yutan. Apple accuses him of giving OpenAI confidential information about suppliers before recruiting its employees, requesting they show and tell confidential information during interviews. And former employee Chang Leo is accused of failing to return an Apple laptop when he left the company, as well as downloading dozens of Apple's confidential hardware-related files. Apple says the company has now hired around 400 of its former employees. Apple's relationship with OpenAI seems to have soured only 2 years after they announced a major partnership. Apple integrated OpenAI's chatbot ChatGPT into its products, and Apple's virtual assistant Siri was able to access it. But last month's updated version of Siri instead used an AI component from Google's Gemini AI model. This is just the latest legal action against OpenAI. Elon Musk's AI company also took a couple of swings at OpenAI, losing 2 cases in 4 weeks. One also accused the company of stealing confidential information linked to its Grok chatbot. And there have been plenty of other challenges from companies around rapidly advancing technology. The New York Times has accused Microsoft and OpenAI of illegally using millions of the publication's articles to train their generative AI models, and that case is ongoing. Others come from music and book publishers, accusing AI companies, including Meta, of pirating their goods without permission. OpenAI has pushed back against Apple's lawsuit, saying it had no interest in other companies' trade secrets. Investors will be watching this case carefully, as OpenAI is considering trading publicly on Wall Street. But the lawsuit could threaten its product development and direction. Its push towards AI hardware reveals that Silicon Valley's AI race may be shifting from apps to other products. If Apple wins a court injunction, it may force the company to redesign this hardware, which could force a delay, potentially allowing the competition to catch up. Laura Khan for Inside Story, Al Jazeera.
Let's bring in our panel of guests to discuss this with us today. In New York, we're joined by Nick Akerman, New York attorney and a former assistant special Watergate prosecutor and a former assistant US attorney for the Southern District of New York. Ray Wang is the CEO and principal analyst at Constellation Research, a technology research and advisory firm. He's joining us from Cupertino, California, of course, the heart of Silicon Valley. And in Sydney, Toby Walsh, Chief Scientist at the AI Institute for the University of New South Wales, Sydney. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us today for the program. A very interesting conversation, but Nick, I'm going to start with a very simple question. I'm hoping you can give me a relatively simple answer. What is a trade secret?
A trade secret is defined as any information that gives a company a competitive edge. And as part of proving a trade secret, you also have to show that you've taken reasonable steps to protect that secret. It goes to 2 points. One, why would you not take reasonable steps if it does give you a competitive edge? And two, why should the court go about enforcing a trade secret if the company is not enforcing it internally itself? The complaint that has been filed against, in this case, really goes through the various ways that Apple has taken reasonable steps to protect these trade secrets. The actual trade secret and the notion that it gives a competitive edge is not going to be revealed in public. It's going to wind up being in a private hearing before the judge or in private filings that are held in secret before the court.
So everything is still going to stay secret to some extent here, Ray, no matter what the accusation is flying that it got revealed to one party or the other. But are you surprised that Apple has pursued and filed a case here?
Oh, I'm definitely not surprised. We've seen an exodus of AI talent. And what was interesting to note is the fact that 400 people have already left, and the systematic interview process, the systematic way of looking at how information was passed, that's really what's at the heart of this. I mean, these are people that are engineers that can actually bring together the technology, the ability to talk about how to actually create these products, the trade secrets that are happening with the software technology, on how we'll use AI, the engineering prowess, and even the partners are all part of this larger complaint.
Toby, can I bring you in here? Because the case is attracting headlines clearly because of the names of the parties involved. But I'm wondering how much of this is not actually about the fact that one of them's an AI company and one of them is a huge technology company that's bringing in AI, but about how we will have access to that type of technology in the future and the devices that we use.
Yeah, it demonstrates that AI is starting to become a consumer product. And Apple, of course, are the king of building consumer products. And so previously, they had a business relationship with OpenAI. They were using OpenAI's models, ChatGPT, in Apple Intelligence. So it demonstrates that relationship is completely broken, and they now feel that they're competitors.
Yeah. As Ray, I'll bring you in here because as Toby just pointed out, they were in a partnership. That relationship would look to now have been significantly soured.
Well, it's a classic Silicon Valley frenemy situation where people partner when they're behind, people partner when they have a common enemy. But keep in mind, California is one of those few states where non-competes are not enforced. And this is not the complaint. It's when you leave with the trade knowledge and you systematically steal the trade knowledge in an interview process, in a conversation. That's the allegation. And that systemic IP theft at a grand scale is really what's worrisome, especially to Apple, which guards its secrets like anything else. I mean, this is Cupertino, we're the headquarters for Apple. And as you know, even the people who live here don't even talk about what teams are on, what's going on. I mean, it's a very secretive company.
Yeah, it is. It does seem a very secretive company. Nick, then I'm wondering how much of this, though, when you read through the filing, how much of it's an AI problem and how much of it is a rogue employee problem?
I think it's kind of both. It's certainly a rogue employee problem because these employees clearly have been instructed on the efficacy of keeping this information absolutely confidential. They've signed agreements agreeing to keeping it confidential. And on top of all that, you've got a very concerted effort. If you take the complaint on its face as true, you have a very concerted effort from the top trying to recruit employees, bringing employees with a show and tell where they actually bring in models of work that's been done by Apple. I mean, that's probably one of the most outrageous parts of this. As many of these types of cases I've done, I've never quite seen that before. And really encouraging employees to provide more information as they learn more information with respect to what Apple has. So all in all, this is a pretty serious case. It really is, you can't really say this is solely relates to the fact of artificial intelligence. This is a classic trade secrets case where a competitor has allegedly tried to steal confidential information from a company that it knows has excellent materials and excellent products that would go into anything that they do with respect to hardware with AI.
Can I drill down into one of the points you put? I know there's a number of allegations made, and you're right. One of the allegations is that potential job candidates were asked to bring, the accusation is asked to bring items in from Apple into a job interview. That seems like a remarkable ask, but also, is it illegal to ask? I would have thought it was illegal for the employee or a breach of their employment with Apple, but maybe not illegal to ask someone to do it.
It's definitely illegal to ask somebody. Essentially, what they're doing is they're trying to conspire with an employee and facilitate an employee to violate the trade secret laws, to violate their agreements with Apple. Clearly illegal. Okay.
Clearly, I'm not an expert and shouldn't be in the hiring part of the HR department of OpenAI. Ray, I want to know, Apple says that it wrote to OpenAI before all of this went to court and before they made a filing, and they never got a response. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me, because if you respond, you're actually admitted to guilt, and I think they just chose to ignore them. And given the fact that they hadn't consummated anything with their partnership working with OpenAI with Siri, this was one of those things where you just say, okay, we're going to ignore it. We're not going to acknowledge anything, and let's see what happens. But as you know, I mean, there's been a lot going on at OpenAI as they're trying to go public. And this is just one more thing that's slowing them down. But it's not strange. But what is strange is to see all this documented in iMessage threads, in always, it's probably the most expensive LOL in history, where you document how you're actually doing it. You use it on iMessage, and you leave all the information on trail. So allegedly, this is something where it's not too hard to show that it's a concerted effort.
Yeah, I want to talk about that more in a moment. But Toby, can I come to you? Because obviously this has been a complaint that's been quite detailed in what it says has been the behaviour by OpenAI employees. But I'm also wondering, is there a sense that Apple is being controlling here or possessive, and maybe just simply frustrated as well, that what's driven them to this point is they have lost hundreds of employees to a competitor?
No, I don't think that's driving that. I think what's driving it is certainly that they feel that they're going to be fighting OpenAI in the consumer product market, and so they're no longer a friend, they're definitely a competitor. OpenAI stands to lose hundreds of millions or billions of dollars here, so it's a real headache for OpenAI. It's going to perhaps even delay even further the IPO. This is something they really would be hoping is going to go away.
Is it a mistake for them to have tried to move into the hardware sector or the hardware industry here, given where their competitors were at and the level at which they have had to, say, maybe the tactics that they are being accused of employing to even get this far?
Well, they were sort of painted into that corner because their leading competitor, Anthropic, that make the Claude chatbot, they've really cornered the business market. That leaves OpenAI with the consumer market. And if you want to make money in the consumer market, consumers don't really pay a lot of subscriptions, but they do buy nice, expensive hardware. That's how Apple has become the trillion-dollar company it is. So OpenAI was clearly hoping to follow the same sorts of footsteps in the AI market.
Yeah. Can I ask you, Nick, why this has got to a court filing? Why haven't these companies settled yet?
I think it's very simple. This conduct is so outrageous, if you believe the allegations in the complaint, that sending a letter, which is what you normally do before you file a lawsuit, and if there's something that really is untoward here and there's nothing to these allegations, you would expect OpenAI to come forward and say, look, you're all mistaken, and here is exactly why you've read this all wrong. When you don't get a response like that, the obvious reaction from Apple would be, sure, we're right, and we've got this in the messaging, we've got the evidence here. I mean, it sounds like all of this is written down or it's in computer files. The fact that one of these employees left and accessed the Apple computer and the Apple information while working at OpenAI, I mean, that is just, in terms of these kinds of cases, dynamite evidence.
When you look at the description of the complaint, and it talks about how much of this conduct did occur at job interviews, are you surprised that OpenAI is willing to hire and actively wants to hire employees who are so also happy to give up trade secrets or information that they shouldn't be, that belongs to their employer?
Well, the interesting thing in California is there's no non-competes, as I said earlier. And what happens is when you leave, you can leave with the knowledge inside the organization. So normally it's like 10, 15 people that leave. This is 400 employees. I mean, this is the head of Apple Watch, the head of Vision Pro. This is the people on the human interface design team.
It also just seems so unusual because there was no guarantee you were going to get a job, and yet you were going to sit in the room and spill potentially some quite damaging information to your current employer.
Yeah, and that's the piece of it. I mean, the question is where your loyalties lie and what triggered this. But in the background, there was always a fight between John Turnus and this team. Tang was really the engineer that built a lot of this capability, and that conflict just grew across the teams because Tang wanted the top job in product. And so there's a personal piece on the back end, there's a corporate piece that's going on, and of course, it's the competitive Silicon Valley ethos that's going on here with AI.
Yeah. Toby, I'll ask you then. OpenAI has said it has no interest in other companies' trade secrets. Do you believe that? I'm quite nosy. I definitely have an interest in another company's trade secrets.
I don't think they did. What Ray didn't mention, of course, is that OpenAI is a much younger company. It can offer really attractive, I mean, some people would say obscene salary packages, share options that Apple can't, which is one reason why there has been a large number of people leaving Apple, because they see such generation offering wealth that they can get if they move place and take that knowledge with them. Maybe not just take it in their heads, but take it on pieces of paper.
Does AI offer that in a stable and long-term form at the moment, or are people looking at this as a way to really push their career forward? I don't really have a measure on short-term, but over the next couple of years with this explosion of AI as a tech that people are interested in?
Many people see it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, that the window will close very soon. We won't be seeing these $100 million packages are being offered for much longer. That this is, well, whether it's a bubble or whether it's AI, AGI happening once, this I don't think we're ever going to see happening again.
Nick, then when you look at we talked a little bit about, whether this was settled or whether it would go to court. But do you see these sorts of disputes as things, we're talking about with the metal casing on a phone, or we're talking about rounded corners, or all the little bits of design as hardware comes to the fore that people are starting to argue about as the market does narrow? I think it was, as Toby pointed out, we're competing for consumers here. Do you see these arguments coming up more and more in an industry like Silicon Valley?
I would think so. I would think that most companies that are in the technology business are very attuned to protecting their trade secrets, that they have programs in place, they have agreements with people on confidentiality, and these agreements are all enforceable. And I think what you're going to see, because this kind of a case, just to understand it, is not about just getting damages. This is about actually stopping the behavior that's going on right now. And unlike a normal civil case that can go on for years, where people argue about how much money they're due, this case is about stopping behavior. And so you're going to see some action very quickly in the next couple of days, where Apple's going to go in and ask for a temporary injunction, whether it's a temporary restraining order or a preliminary injunction. And so this case is going to be resolved very quickly, because once the court enters that order, particularly the preliminary injunction, the case, for all practical purposes, is all over.
Yeah, how will they be feeling at OpenAI, do you think, Ray?
Well, I think they're in a defense mode at the moment. You've seen X and SpaceX go up public. Anthropic is next. And so, as someone said earlier, I mean, look, the enterprise market, as Toby mentioned, is basically now Anthropic's. The SpaceX model is basically a different game. And so it's up to OpenAI to play the consumer game. So it's going to take them some time, but there's a lot they can do. But I think this is allegedly looks really, really bad on their end. So I think it's in both their best interest to settle this very quickly.
Yeah. Toby, do you think this hurts OpenAI's reputation at the moment, where things stand as an AI company and what its opportunities, or what it's presenting its opportunities to be?
It doesn't help. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has certainly had his reputation tarnished. I don't think this helps it much further.
We just have temporarily lost our connection there with Toby. Ray, I'll come to you. I wanted to ask you, maybe a little bit more about your own personal experience here, because this is, as you said, a small area where there's a lot of employees, but they're all in the same industry. You hear a lot about people moving between companies, but this is also where executives will see each other and bump into each other at quite a lot of events. They will live in the same neighbourhoods. They'll go to the same exclusive conferences. How awkward is this going to be between Apple bosses and their former colleagues who now work at OpenAI?
Well, the Silicon Valley is kind of small, and you do bump into everyone. I just had a barbecue at the back of my house, and I can say a number of those, you can see a lot of competitors in the same spot, right? It's not uncommon to have competitors, to have colleagues, former ex-workers. I had 300 people at my barbecue, so I can tell you that a lot of people had worked with each other in the past. But it's also the spirit. That's where the entrepreneurship, the innovation comes, because you've got venture capitalists, you've got technologists, you've got people that are interested in the marketing side, all coming together to create the next set of innovations. So it is part of the ethos, but nothing this egregious allegedly has happened in a long time.
It's a good gossip at a backyard barbecue. I won't ask how big your backyard is to fit 300 people, but Nick, obviously these are companies that they employ a lot of people, and a lot of this gossip does get around. I'm wondering then, if we look at Apple's role here, we know that they've made all these allegations, and they did detail as well quite a lot of things that they say that they do to prevent this information going any further. Do you see, from what you've read, that Apple has taken enough preventative action?
It certainly seems that way. There's nothing that's perfect. You can't create a Fort Knox in a sense where nobody can take anything. And it's not only taking, it's information that's in their head as well. So there's no way you can make this absolutely perfect. The best you can do is what it seems like Apple has done, which is to train people in this area, which is to get them to make agreements, which is to look at the information, make sure it's secure, locked up. There may be some chinks in the armor, as opposed to being perfect. How somebody could walk out with a model without signing it out, or with people not knowing, that's a little bit troublesome. But I think the only requirement here is that the steps be reasonable. There's no way you can ever make it perfect. And the fact that somebody can remember things or remember certain parts of this, that's always a harder instance to prove that somebody's actually memorized these trade secrets and used them. It's been done. People do it. And I've gotten injunctions based on that. But it's a lot harder to prove than when you've got actual messaging, directions to employees to what to do. It seems like certain people have already turned state's evidence here and have really kind of spilled their guts as to what was going on. And maybe some of those people are still Apple employees. My sense is, from reading this complaint, this is a pretty strong case. And the only thing that's really left to detail is the actual trade secrets themselves and why they give Apple a competitive edge. And of course, that is all secret, and the court will maintain that secrecy by putting under seal the information that relates to those trade secrets. So again, this is not much different than a traditional trade secret where I've been involved with insurance companies, with other kind of audit companies that have customers, that have special information that relates to customers or suppliers. It really fits into a very traditional legal framework here. And the question now is, what's the evidence? How strong is it? And will the court grant a preliminary injunction or a TRO?
Yeah. Ray, can I pick up a couple of points that Nick made there? When we talk about what is a reasonable step to have taken, probably what a reasonable step is for me in terms of not reusing the same password is quite different to what Apple would see as reasonable steps to protect its stuff. Why wasn't there someone stopping people walking out the door? And I'm thinking about some of the things that you've raised as well. LOL, I found out I can access the server. So funny, said one former employee. Is any of this embarrassing to Apple, that it didn't take some basic steps that people might be quite surprised by?
Actually, not at all. Apple has very precise rules and standard operating procedures. For example, 2 employees at Apple on 2 different divisions might not even have access to those offices. They might not be able to get into a floor. To be able to take those models out was very, very interesting, because that's not something that's easy to do at Apple. Their security is very tight. Here at Apple Park, I'm just a mile from my house. I can tell you that I mean, to even get in, to even get stuff out, I mean, it's very secure. What happened in terms of being accessed the server was really the fact that one of the employees actually had the device, an ex-Apple device, and a second one that was being accessed and not returned, which makes it look even damaging. Allegedly, that's what the complaint is. And so, I mean, the secret level, I mean, even if you look at all the different employees, if you talk to them, they don't talk about their work. Outside of work, they rarely speak at conferences. I mean, there's a lot of procedures that are going on there. Now, despite that, there's also a lot of boomerangs. People come back to work at Apple as well after leaving, and they also come back. So it's definitely a place where people understand the rules, they understand what's required. And of course, I mean, I would say they do not have lax security in any way.
All right, we've got a couple of minutes left, and I would like to hopefully get a question with you each. So, Nick, I'll just ask you briefly for your thoughts on this. We mentioned before that OpenAI is planning to go public. Do you think this case is going to impact them if it drags out any longer than the few days that you've said we should be watching out for?
I don't think this case will drag out very long. I think you're going to get a decision from a judge pretty quickly. If the allegations in the complaint are true, there's going to be a preliminary injunction in place, which means that they cannot use any of Apple's trade secrets. They have to return whatever documents they have. They have to return whatever information they have. I mean, that will be dragged out a bit, I would think, because it seems like there's a lot of information out there. And the court will probably allow Apple to actually take depositions and find exactly where all of this information is. That will drag out, but I think in the end, fairly quickly, you're going to get an injunction saying, don't look at this stuff, you can't use this stuff, and return it immediately. That's what we're going to see.
All right, Ray, I've got just less than a minute left. So give me your final thoughts then. I saw you nodding along there. You think Apple's going to win this, and will it hurt OpenAI's offering later this year that they're planning to go to?
If the claims are correct and the allegations are correct, this is an open and closed shut case. What hurt OpenAI? The short answer is not necessarily. Like, if they end this quickly and move forward, then they're going to have to find a different way to build those devices. But at the end, they've got a really good talent pool that they've taken from Apple. So it's something to think about.
Thank you, Ray Wang, who joins us from Cupertino in California. Nick Akerman joining us from New York on the East Coast, and Toby Walsh joining us from Sydney a little earlier in the program. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For now, that's it from me, Anna Burns-Francis, and the team here. Al Jazeera's coverage continues in a moment. Stay tuned.